Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. When General Mkhwanazi held the press conference on Sunday, he created a conundrum for the government and for the president. He created a confounding conundrum for the president because he impugned ministers. He impugned senior police officials for being involved in underworld criminal dealings with syndicates. General Mkhwanazi created a kerfuffle, a hullabaloo. He exposed a miasma in the South African police service. When this kind of thing happens, a government resorts to what is known as crisis communications. You may be wondering, what exactly is crisis communication? Crisis communication is a specific type of public relations. It's the strategic practice of managing and sharing critical information during emergencies, unexpected events, or public issues that could harm an organization's reputation or operation. It involves rapid, clear, and effective communication, which is aimed at mitigating risk, maintaining trust, and ensuring organizational continuity. The organizations which are at risk here are the South African Police Service, the Cabinet, the ANC. So all three would have all of their public relations and communications officials hard at work behind the scenes, creating strategies, tactics to protect employees, to reassure the public, and to minimize negative impacts as much as possible. And I think in the last 2 days, we've seen various attempts at crisis communications since the Mkhwanazi tsunami. You can typically tell which part of the communication which is happening around this issue is crisis communication because of the side of the narrative that they take and the interest that that narrative is trying to protect. So I'm going to show you in this episode some examples which I think are part of crisis communications which has been unfolding since Sunday. The first set of clips come from Paul O'Sullivan, who's a very well-connected man and who's been doing multiple radio and TV interviews in the period after the Mkhwanazi press conference. Here's what he had to say.
Both Mkhwanazi and Masemola joined a police supplier on an overseas trip, and the pair of them came back with, Louis Vuitton. It's a very expensive ladies' handbag. And the pair of them came back with a gift from the police supplier, being a Louis Vuitton handbag. And from what I can gather, neither of them disclosed at customs the fact that they had in their possession a gift worth somewhere between 70 and 100,000 rand each. And then what did they do? They probably gave these bags to their wives. And he makes a lot of allegations in that press conference. And although he only made those allegations at midday today, I've had an opportunity to go through them. And some of them, the ones that I have been able to go through and ascertain, I'm satisfied that they're false allegations.
Back, you said that even though it's been a few short hours, you managed to go back and look at some of what Mkhwanazi presented to the public today, and you have established that some of those are false allegations. Just enumerate for us, Paul, which ones you say, even just with a quick investigation, do not stand up to scrutiny.
Well, there's a number of them, and I don't think I want to go into them. And the reason why I don't want to go into them is because Mkhwanazi has acted unlawfully.
When I saw this, I thought there was actually use of the ad hominem fallacy, if I'm quite honest. The ad hominem fallacy, which is also known as attacking the person, is a fallacy of logic which is often used as a method of discrediting the person who is making an argument. The game basically is to get you to focus on the messenger and not on the message. And if you can vilify and demonize the person who's making the particular argument, some people may be swayed not to listen or not to believe or not to examine the arguments which have been presented, and you are then successful. Some of this came across to me as an ad hominem fallacy. In addition, there was no evidence provided at all to corroborate the claims around the Louis Vuitton bags. And I actually hope that the journalist would actually push back and ask for proof of this Louis Vuitton bags being not declared at the airport, etc., and what proof there was that they went to wives. All of that just sounded to me like spurious allegations and sounded baseless. Also, if Mr. O'Sullivan was aware of these discrepancies, why did he wait for this moment? Why not report the corruption and open a case and submit the available evidence to the police himself? Because if you're aware of corruption, you have an obligation to report that particular corruption and actually to assist the police in holding those people responsible. Mr. O'Sullivan also curiously says he examined the allegations made by General Mkhwanazi in a few hours and was able to discredit them. And if it was so easy for him to do so, why not share the basis for that refutation with the public while you were doing these media interviews, a plethora of media interviews? He simply used the trust me basis of proof. Says, I've looked at them, I've discredited them, they're not credible. Tell us, take us into your confidence. We can't just take your word for it. If the general has made available the evidence he has of the WhatsApp text messages, if some of the things that he has alleged are commonly known and have been reported on by the media, we can't just take your version as being true. You're trying to just say, trust me, bro, at a moment where we need more than that. The Vusi Matlala matter has been traversed by the media. He has been implicated in various tender scams, and he's a Hoshkar father with known Hoshkar mamas. We've seen proof of payments. We've seen reports that his weapons were at the Sean Mkhize mansion. We've seen reports that Bekele was staying at his home at some point. So we need more than just Mr. Paul O'Sullivan doing an interview saying, I looked at the allegations and I refuted them. The information that has been presented by General Mkhwanazi is in the public domain, and what is not in the public domain has been supplied by the general. So it's not sufficient to simply say at this point, I disprove the allegations and fail to furnish the rationale and the evidence. I would have hoped that the journalist, Iman Rapeti, would have actually said, no, bruh, this is not good enough. You need to take us into your confidence. You can't just say Mkhwanazi, is acting unlawfully. Therefore, I'm not going to tell you what my refutation is of the allegations that he's making, especially if you're taking the interview and you're saying that you are coming to disprove those particular things. Then he also said that he's making some calls for a commission of inquiry. This is what he said.
So what I'm now doing, in fact, I've sent an email today to Masemola, and I've copied the president, and I've said I'm now calling for a judicial commission of inquiry into what the hell is going on in the police service of this country, because it's completely unacceptable. But I can tell you, he's triggered something which may just be the end of his life in the police service.
Paul, what do you mean?
Well, the reality is he wasn't authorized to do what he did, because I'm calling for a judicial commission of inquiry. I have today written to the minister, and I've asked the minister, without overreaching his executive powers, to arrange for Masemola and Mkhwanazi to be suspended until we can get to the bottom of what their conduct is actually involved in and where it's leading. Well, I can't second guess what's going on inside the head of a criminal like Mkhwanazi. But the reality of the situation is he's overstepped his mark, and I want to see that man fall, and the sooner the better.
Some of this was very unsettling because he seems to have so much power and influence to be able to get these media interviews, to be able to be sending emails to the police commissioner, CCing the president. We've been told before that this type of influence is akin to capture. We've been told that the Guptas, by issuing directions to Malisu Gigaba, were actually acting in a way that was unconstitutional and unlawful. So I don't know if Mr. O'Sullivan has that level of influence, but from what he's saying, some of this is unsettling. Some of what he said sounded like a threat. If I'm being very honest, he seems to have concluded and has given us no evidence that General Mkhwanazi is a criminal. He seems to have the capacity to reach the highest offices in the land, the highest offices in policing, the minister, the commissioner, the president. Who has this type of influence and has access to editors and producers to be able to be on radio shows within a few hours, on TV shows within a few hours? It seems as if, he's part of the crisis communications. If I'm honest with you, in such a critical moment, it's fair to wonder if the number of interviews that were done by Mr. Paul O'Sullivan are actually part of this crisis communications. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. I don't know. But knowing what we now know about, crisis communications and how it works, and also knowing what we know about the manufacturing of consent by governments, by administrations, by organizations, through public relations firms, and through their own communications efforts, we can't necessarily ignore that this could be part of the crisis communications and that these are some of the responses which they're testing and trying to see if they'll land with the public. This man is a very powerful man. I've seen pictures of him with President Ramaphosa earlier on in his life. I don't know what his full relationship is with everybody, but it seems as if clearly he's somebody who can do this and make these type of statements quite boldly. I once saw him doing an interview with Sakina over the phone, Sakina Kamwendo, and I was very concerned with his approach. He was very abrasive. He refused to answer particular questions. And in that instance, he was defending the president from some of the Phala allegations. And at that time, he didn't even raise any questions around the fact that Hazim Mustafa did not declare the money when he came through customs, but he seems clearly to care that in his version that Mkhwanazi and General Masemola did not declare the Louis Vuitton bags that he says they got from a supplier. So do you care about declarations or do you not care about declarations? That type of inconsistency can open you up to scrutiny. But he wasn't the only person who was speaking on this issue. The ANC also had some responses to the developments. The ANC Youth League president took a bite, and then later the Secretary General of the ANC also took a bite. Here are the clips.
Days of statements and populism have ended. If he has got evidence on them, must arrest them. We're not a country of lawlessness. We don't want statements. We don't want press briefings. We want people to be arrested. If you are doing crime, you're putting drugs in our country, you're working with criminals, arrest them. We don't want commissioners that are becoming politicians. We want commissioners that act. His role as a commissioner of police is to arrest those who do crime. Now, we don't want him to be a pop star. If he wants to contest politics, he must come to branches of the ANC and contest. But if he wants to be a commissioner, he must arrest those who do crime. We don't want statements, we want arrests.
As the ANC, what do you have to say in response to this?
We have issued a brief statement. These are grave accusations by a police commissioner, which borders on lawlessness, and the state of our law enforcement agencies is worrisome. And we have full confidence that the president will deal with these matters with all the powers vested in him. The police force can't communicate things of this nature. We put a blind eye to that. But over and above that, some of these issues must actually be investigated, but also all protocols of the state must be observed. Okay. And that's what we would like to see as the African National Congress.
Why do you say it's lawlessness?
It borders on lawlessness and a banana republic, that a high-ranking police commissioner can basically go to television and make a disparaging and grave accusations and allegations in the way we have learned about them. And it borders on lawlessness and banana republic, because at the end of the day, we've got to do something about those things. And also the protocol and the discipline of the police command and control is very important. I was a minister of police. I worked very well with the police, and I know protocols of the police, but I'm not about to talk about my own personal experience.
Well, in my view, the ANC Youth League president was a little bit too dismissive. He seemed to miss the mood of the public and also the support for the general and the public frustration with crime, organized crime syndicates. I think the ANC Youth League president ignores the nature of the issues that were raised, and that those issues make those particular interventions he was calling for, the arrest of the minister, the arrest of the Lieutenant General Sibiya, unlikely, and also that the procedure within the system is unlikely to be successful. General Mkhwanazi went to the public because he views the minister and the Lieutenant General Sibiya as people who will act in a manner where the internal processes will not work. So to argue and call for internal processes and to say, don't be political, all of that, sometimes you do need to be political. Sometimes you do need to make the public aware of certain things that are happening so that you can have leverage, so that the public can apply pressure. and get the outcomes that are necessary. So him being so dismissive, I think, was the wrong tone and the wrong crisis communications response. I think Fikile Mbalula took a more measured tone, and in taking that more measured tone seemed to be appreciative of the nature of the allegations, the seriousness of this particular moment, but he also was critical of procedure and protocols. And I think the protocol issue is not persuasive to me. Sometimes protocol and procedures are how you get slowed down, how you get frustrated, and how those who control the bureaucracy then get to make those issues go away, or actually hope to manage the public and public opinion by making those issues fall away from the public attention quite quickly. As I've said, and quoted, Tupac Shakur has actually said, South Africa is a movie, a drama, a series. And, you never know what's going to happen from one week to the next. Because of that, reality that Tupac pointed out in his song Mzansi Don't Cry, we have to be aware that sometimes those who are in politics and government are just hoping for things to pass on and that the public will focus on something else. And therefore, if the public is focusing on something else, the pressure on that government official moves on. If you recall, there was a lot of scrutiny on Khumbudzo Ntshavheni earlier in the year, and also as a result of her talking about smoking out minors. And when people started dying underground, there was a lot of scrutiny of her, and some allegations around her conduct as municipal manager started showing up. But soon after that, people's attention moved on to other issues, and she kind of got off the hook inadvertently as a result of the public attention moving. Of course, guys, I must be clear. Tupac didn't say that. Mkhwanazi Dlamini said that, right? So don't actually believe that Tupac said that, right? Mkhwanazi Dlamini is the one who said that. Having said that, sometimes the argument that I'm making, the point that I'm making, that protocol and procedure is how you get slowed down, how those who control the bureaucracy make those issues go away. Babita Deokaran actually followed protocol, but ultimately she paid with her life. Criminals are not following protocol. Syndicates are not following protocol. And they're hoping that they can get you as you follow protocol before the public becomes aware. And we'll come to your funeral, we'll cry, and that will be the protocol, but it won't actually be something that prevents the continuation of the looting, of the syndicates, of all of the shenanigans which are playing out. To be fair to Fikile Mbalula, unlike Paul O'Sullivan, he actually defended the choice of attire by the general. He actually pointed out that the allegations that have been raised do need to be investigated, that it does look from the allegations that there's chaos within the police and that these are issues that need to be defended and that the president will deal with the issues. I think he understands at this point that the ANC cannot take a clear side in this issue, because he also tried to distance himself and say, or the ANC say, no, the minister is bound by the ethics code. The ANC is not necessarily going to be responsible for the things that he may or may not have done. So you can see that he's trying to manage that balance between the public opinion, the issues, and they can't really take a strong stand before they see how much evidence is in the public domain, how much does actually General Mkhwanazi actually have, and how is the public responding. So they are aware that there's an election coming up, and if they take the wrong side on this issue, that could potentially hurt them significantly. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has also said he would deal with the issue, and this is what he had to say.
On the issue of the announcement, or better still, what the police commissioner of KZN, General Mkhwanazi, said, I was not aware of it, that it was coming. And obviously it is a matter that I will be dealing with when I get home. I will need to look at it more closely and have a thoroughgoing discussion with a number of people. And thereafter, there will be a clear way forward. This is not a matter that we should not give attention to. It is a serious matter. It has to do with the security of our people, but it also has to do with our adherence to the rule of law. The police play a critical role in enhancing the rule of law, the safety of South Africans, and that those who have done wrong should be dealt with, and should be dealt with thoroughly in terms of our constitution and our laws. So this matter is going to be addressed.
This will be a big test for President Ramaphosa, in my opinion. He can't simply say he's shocked. He can't simply defer and buy time, because people are almost aware that sometimes that is what he's prone to do. Also, a commission of inquiries that Paul O'Sullivan has called for and others maybe think will work could be useful, but people are frustrated because they've seen the Zondo Commission and they actually are, even the Higher Education Commission, there's been a bunch of commissions which have not materialized to tangible change. So this will be a test for him in terms of how quickly he responds and what he does. He's already removed the deputy minister of the Democratic Alliance from his position for that trip that occurred when he went to Washington without permission. So if he takes too long or seems to be buying time, this will harm his reputation, I think, with the Democratic Alliance, also with the public. It may harm his legacy and also the credibility of the ANC. There's an election coming up next year, local government election. And if the public feels like issues of this nature are not being dealt with in time, that could be a calamity for them. There are many ministers who are now facing heat for allegations. You know, Nobu Hlenkabane is one of them, Minister of Higher Education, and there's a continuing risk that exists when you continue to have these small fires showing up. And this one is not even a small fire. If you continue with business as usual, as these conflagrations continue to spread, that's going to be something that could actually be such that you end up being the collateral damage for these particular ministers. President Ramaphosa has set expectations now that he will act. You know, the very fact that he says, I'm coming when I land, the president has left Brazil, all of these things create expectations. And so the public will be waiting for some action in the short to medium term. It won't be possible for him to get into next week and the next week and the next week, because General Mkhwanazi also raised the stakes with this particular thing. The stakes are high right now, and the stakes are so significant. And this has been the conversation which has been occupying the public imagination. There's another conversation about funerals and grace and stuff like that. But I won't talk about that. It's not substantive enough for this platform. So let's look at the substantive arguments or criticisms which have been raised of General Mkhwanazi in the last few days. Number one, protocol, that this is not the right way to do things. He didn't follow protocol. Number two, that the mandate that he has was overstepped, that he only had the mandate to look at political killings in KZN, and in doing any of the other things he did, he overstepped his mandate. That, you know, this is about the race for the police commissioner post. And also, why was he wearing the special forces uniform? Here are some of my thoughts on these lines of communication and some of the criticisms. Number one, these are not material refutations to the allegations and that he made. And I think as such, they are not landing in a manner that the public is going to take seriously, because the public doesn't care that he was wearing that uniform. The public doesn't care that he didn't follow the protocol. The public cares about the fact that syndicates are destroying communities and seem to have relationships with powerful politicians. These responses are not swaying the public against General Mkhwanazi because they are more vested in the problem of organized crime being solved than the question of optics or the question of procedure. The mandate argument is one that I think needs a little bit of unpacking. There's almost this premise in that argument that crime only occurs by province in a province. Yet we know that the killers of Ulirato committed the crime in Johannesburg. Then they fled to KwaZulu-Natal, right, where they were apprehended. Perhaps the mandate altogether of the political killings task force was too narrow, in that the people involved in the political killings or these types of killings are not likely to be operating within only one province, and only trying to limit a person to investigate in one province would then curtail them from being able to truly bust the people responsible for these activities. So to argue that the General Mkhwanazi was wrong because he breached his mandate by going into other provinces, may be missing that the mandate was not properly structured or construed for him to be able to execute his duties. Because you're basically saying, you know, if a thief is in the yard and then the dog is chasing him and then the thief gets to the gate, the dog mustn't go into the street because the thief has now gone into the streets, and the mandate of the particular, you know, enforcement, what is it, German Shepherd, it would be most typically, is only at the gate. That wouldn't work as a metaphor. And it also, I don't think, works here when we're talking about human beings and the way that crime goes across borders. And I'm not comparing anybody to animals. I hope you don't take that from the metaphor, right? I think the gear in and of itself that they wore was appropriate symbolism for the moment and for the cause. I don't think anybody viewed it as some kind of a coup attempt or anything of that nature. I think it was viewed and understood to be that no, war on crime, this is very serious, and that Mkhwanazi was actually trying to say that I'm on the ground, I'm with these people, this is how we roll. I'm not an office police officer, I'm a street police officer, and we're dealing with people at the street level. And journalists have confirmed that some of the reporting and some of the investigating and the apprehensions have happened as a result of the political killings task force. And they were the ones who were able to bust a lot of these people. And the evidence, the WhatsApps are being shared and people are seeing. And Mkhwanazi actually did share. Eyewitness News released an extensive interview where he was showing them the WhatsApp messages. So he is credible at this particular point. And I don't think we can be dismissive of him simply on the basis of what he was wearing and simply on the trust me type of basis. I don't know, though. What do you think about all of this that's happening? Some time has passed since the general made these explosive revelations. Yesterday, we saw a lot of media houses covering it. We saw 702 hosts covering it, asking questions, probing. Do you think the president will act fast? Will this be another scandal that makes a splash and quietly goes into the closet of skeletons? I'm sure that closet is full now. That closet is, the skeletons that are now being put in that closet are not... These are massive skeletons. I don't know. Is it a magical closet that leads to corruption, Narnia, or something of that effect? Because they are putting elephant skeletons in that closet. In fact, some of these skeletons are mammoth skeletons. We're seeing skeletons in there from the prehistoric era where we were seeing, paleontologists would need all the tools to be able to go into those closets and excavate some of the skeletons that are in there because they are fossil size skeleton at this point. I'm just wondering, how much more can that closet actually take? The closet of Smolanyana skeletons, because what is even Smolanyana? Now we're talking epic proportions of skeleton. What do you think, though? Let's have a conversation in the comments. I'll meet you there.
South Africa is a movie. We live in a drama. It's a series. Every day you will be shocked by something new. We have even forgotten what shocked us 2 weeks ago.